Hey everyone, my name's Stephen Titchener, and whether you're creating a new business or rebranding an existing one, the naming process is one of the hardest bits of branding. So today in this video, we're going to talk about the steps you can take to get the perfect name for your business. So first off, let's talk about why a good name is of benefit to your company. It's not something that's going to save a badly executed idea, but it can be a super powerful marketing tool. It's a good name represents your company, it represents your products, it represents your values. It's that all-inclusive everything. It's something that's going to stick around with every interaction with your customers. It's always going to be there on your marketing, on your product itself, on your website, everywhere. Your name is going to be there, so it needs to be amazing. I like to think of a company name as being like a beacon. So it's shining out to everyone, saying this is who we are and this is how we work. So if you think of it as two guys, for instance, our name is just two guys, which sounds quite simple to start with, but the name means a lot more than you think. So how we've positioned ourselves is that the agency, two guys, is one guy and the client is the other guy, and you're working like best friends. So just like two guys, it's simple, it's collaborative, and that's the route we've gone down. So at its best, a name can distill exactly what your brand is, exactly who your company are. It distills the purpose and sets expectations for your customers and your audience to give them expectations of what to expect when getting involved with your brand. You know, brand names, they give us a sense of direction. They help us influence our choices, they shape our ideas and our behaviour around a company. And some of the best brand names even become words in themselves. If you think of Google, you commonly hear people just Google it, which it's just become such a big thing now, and that is really just a brand name. It's the same with Hoovers. They're actually vacuum cleaners, but you class Dyson and Hoover and any other one as a Hoover. At its worst, a brand name can really dilute the brand, it can dilute the product, it can dilute the service, and it can end up limiting its marketing potential, or even, in the worst case, create outrage. There was a time where Kellogg's tried to rename Cocoa Pops to Choco Krispies. I think it lasted about 2 months before it got changed back because of just the sheer outrage that it caused. So that's why a brand name is super important. Having the correct brand name can really help the chance of a business succeeding. But creating brand name is hard. It's really hard. There are even some agencies that their entire business model is just to create brand names. That is all they do, and most of them are pretty good at it. The reason it's so hard to do is you might wake up one day and have just an aha moment and you've got this perfect brand name and it's easy. But a lot of the time, there are a lot more reasons than you would think to why a brand name won't work. First off, it's completely opinion based. So you might be thinking of a brand name that you think it's perfect, it's amazing, but that's based on your personal values. It's based on your thoughts, it's based on all your experiences throughout your life, and you attach those to the name. Whereas if someone else, one of your audience, comes to see the same name, they have their own thoughts and their own values and their own experiences, which then they relate to the name. So it's hard to come up with that perfect name, to try and make something that works holistically across the board for everyone, including your audience, your customers already, potential customers, yourself even. So you've got to really stay objective when creating a brand name. I'm not saying that you should go with a name that you think sucks, because that's not something you're going to be happy with, and then you're not going to really promote it to its full extent. But you just have to keep in mind that your clients and your audience are going to have different views. So you have to make sure you're not having this very personal relationship with the brand name. The second point is that it's already taken. You might come up with an amazing name, you might do it in the shower, or you might come up with it in a meeting. And then you go to check on a company's house, or even go to find the URL, and it's already taken. This can be a massive downfall for a lot of brands, a lot of companies and people trying to come up with brand names because they have this amazing one, but they just can't use it. So for this, it's always a good idea just to take a step back when you're creating a name. Don't get too attached to anything straight away, and just give it a check, give it a run through Google or some kind of URL purchasing site that then you can see, is this actually a name that I can use? Third, it means something else. So if your company is going to go global, it might just be a local thing, but if it is going global, you need to make sure that your name that you're coming up with doesn't mean something else in a different language. So there's a famous example of Chevrolet trying to launch a Nova in Latin America. Now in English it's just a normal word, it doesn't really mean anything bad, but in Spanish Nova means doesn't go. And so these cultural checks, these language checks are always a good idea to do to make sure that you're not going to come up with a name that just doesn't work in different countries. The Chevrolet example, having a car that means doesn't go isn't an amazing idea. The other issue that we find people come across when creating a brand name is that it is really scary locking in a name, saying this is going to be it. This is it for forever now. This is our name. But my advice to you is to just not get too hung up on creating that perfect name. Just get something that really represents who you are as a brand. There are a lot of companies that will go for 3, 6, 9 months without locking in a name, and it's using a lot of time and going in circles when they should just be saying, this is going to be it, we're committed to this now. And if they'd gone through a proper naming process, it does become a lot easier, and we'll show you that in an upcoming video. So just a fun fact, and brand name fact, that brand names do have trends as well. So like fashion, like any clothes, like any design of any kind, it does go in trends. If you look back to the early 20th century, you'll see that brands will be named either about their product or about their founder. So they're very, very simple names. It's either Ford, named after Henry Ford, or something like General Motors or General Electric, which do cars and electric. Fast forward a few years and it starts to go to geographic locations. So a lot of companies are named after where they're based. Think British Airways. And then you go forward another few years into the early 2000s and you start seeing names that have compound or misspelled words to bring together the name. So YouTube, Facebook, Flickr, for instance. And so it's quite interesting to see how naming changes throughout the years and how you need to make sure that your name stands out from the crowd, but also will last for a long time. We don't know what the future of naming could be. It could just be single letters. It might even change to symbols. You could have a company that's an emoji, for instance, which could be quite interesting. So let's get back to how to choose a really great name. So first thing you need to do is to choose a naming direction. Now these come in 3 flavors. You've got descriptive, abstract, and evocative. So descriptive is all about describing what the product is. If you sell mattresses, you might name it Mattress King or something like that. It's a very blunt and simple to recognize naming system. Your users are going to know exactly what you do. There's going to be no second guessing of what you do. The only issue with using this type of naming convention is that it can be quite restricting. So if we go with the Mattress King example, then you decide, you know what, I want to do some more furnishings. You're stuck as Mattress King, and then you're doing sofas. So it does restrict you in terms of that. If you're looking to add more products or services to your company, then I would try and stay away from it, or keep it a little bit more generic, like the British Museum, for instance. Next is the abstract naming. So this is the exact opposite of the descriptive naming. So you're looking at just creating words that don't mean anything at the moment, but eventually will come to mean something. So Google, Skype, Spotify, Uber, they don't mean anything, but they're so well known now that they've given themselves meaning through the brand having such great success. The great thing about abstract naming is that they can be anything, and they can be fun, and they can really represent who your brand are because they're made up. The problem with abstract naming is that they mean nothing. So when your audience comes to land on your website, or if they see an advert, your adverts need to be so strong so they understand what it is you do straight away. As opposed to the descriptive naming, they know exactly what you do, so you can do some bit more inventive adverts. With the abstract naming, at least to start with, people need to understand what it is you do. Finally, evocative naming. So this is my favourite type of naming. I think it's got that good mid-range where you can have a bit of fun with it, but you're not super tied down to who you are and what you do. A good example of a name like this would be Crunchy. So Crunchy bars, they're called that because they're crunchy. But it's quite evocative. It means something. It's kind of describing it, but in a more interesting way. The great thing about naming like this is that it can help build an emotional connection with your company, similar to the abstract naming, but it's a bit more of a stronger link. It can also help differentiate you from other competitors. Maybe it's you're focusing a bit more on a feature or service that you offer, kind of like the descriptive, but you've mixed it up to make it a little bit more interesting. These kind of names can have some similar issues to the abstract naming, with people not really understanding what it is you do or what it is your company does. So you do need to be a little bit clever with your marketing, but overall there is an easier link than a full abstract name. So that's a little way to help start you off into the naming process. But once you've got a name, how do you know if it's great or not? There are a few ways we can look at it. You can run it through a 4-step process, really. The first step is the semantics. Does it convey the message? Does it mean something? Does it share the values of your company? If it does, move it on to the second step, which is the strategic process. So does it align to your business objectives? Is it really going to help you grow your business? If it does, then move it on to the phonetics. What does it sound like? Is it easy to say? Is it easy to spell? Is it easy to remember? If it is all of these, if it's easy to remember and easy to say, then you can move it on to, is it even available? As we mentioned to start with, you can come up with an amazing name, but it might not even be available. Ultimately, with your name, to finally lock it in, you just need to go with your gut feeling. What feels right to you? If you're the business owner, you're really going to understand what the product is and what the business is. So if you hear a name and you think, yeah, that just feels like it belongs to this company, then just go for it, and it will work out. So in the video next week, I'm going to talk about how I personally go through my process for naming brands. I think it's going to be really valuable for all of you to watch. So if you want to, subscribe below and click the notification bell to make sure you hear when that video goes live. I hope you've learned something today, and I look forward to sending a new video out next week.